I, 35 male with my wife 33 female of 9 years, wants to give up our daughters for adoption. Using a throwaway because I'm pretty active in some other subs and don't want this associated with my main account. My wife and I have been together since college and got married a little while after she graduated. When we first got together, she told me she didn't really like kids, and while I was a little disappointed, I didn't care too much about it. I didn't feel very strongly about it either way. We were very in love and things were perfect for a good while. Her birth control failed 6 years ago and I told her that I would support whatever choice she made. She scheduled an abortion but backed out the day before and we became loving and enthusiastic parents. Later on down the road she decided she wanted another child and so we had our second daughter. They are 5 and 3 years old and absolutely perfect. They are both very well behaved and ahead of the curve for kids their ages. Another thing that's worth mentioning, my wife is a Sayam. My job is very demanding and I am out of town for week-long stretches at a time once a month. And then 9-6 the rest of the month. I've had this schedule since we were married basically. I make good money in the low 6 figures and we've never had any kind of financial struggles. For the past few months, I've known something was up with my wife. She is obviously the primary caretaker of our daughters. But recently she's been completely hands-off when I'm at home. I don't mind spending the extra time with my daughters taking care of them, but it's more than that. She will completely ignore them while I'm around. If they ask her for anything at all, she tells them, "Go ask Daddy," and we'll go in our bedroom and lock the door to get away from them. I've been asking her if she's alright and she had been insisting everything was fine until last night. After we put the kids to bed, she came to me and sat me down at the table. She started talking about fun things we had done right after we got married. What a great adventure everything had been. Just generally reminiscing. She was being sweet and funny and loving and my guard was down. She said, back before we had the girls, we could do anything we wanted. I wish we could go back to that. I asked her what she meant. After much prodding, she admitted that she regretted having kids. I said that there were times where I felt overwhelmed too, but that I would always love our daughters. She got quiet. She mumbled something and I asked her to say it again. She yelled, "I don't love them," and then started sobbing. I sat there with my mouth hanging open. She composed herself and then started talking again. She was saying how she had been looking into adoption agencies and foster care. She was making plans to give away my children. I continued to listen, too dumbfounded to say a word, as she babbled on about how amazing it's going to be to have our lives back, how great our relationship will be when we don't have kids anymore. I didn't know what to do. I let her talk herself out, and when she went to bed, I went and got my babies, packed some things, and drove to my mother's house. I called in sick to work today. I told them I'd probably be out the rest of the week. I have a ton of missed calls, voicemails, and texts from my wife. I haven't looked at any of them. I've spent the day talking to my mom about things and keeping the girls occupied. My mom doesn't know what to do either. I'm thinking I have a couple of options. Start calling lawyers or start calling mental health professionals. Maybe both. I don't know if she's having some kind of psychotic delusion or if she's just that awful of a person. I really don't want to go back home to her now, ever. I'm thinking divorce is the best choice, but I can't take care of my kids on my own. What should my next move be? Should I try to call my wife? TLDR. Wife went off the deep end, tells me she regrets having our daughters, 3 and 5, and wants to give them up for adoption so we can go back to our old life. I do not know how to proceed in any regard. Please help me figure out how to handle this. Edit. Additional info. She's not at home all the time with them. They go to pre-K for 6 hours a day, 4 days a week. My mom takes them pretty much every other weekend. She gets a lot of time to herself, even though it could be more. And on nights when I'm home, she goes out with her friends often. And lately when I'm home, she doesn't see the kids at all. It's still possible that she's overwhelmed. But she's not the isolated barefoot and pregnant chained to the stove woman you're picturing here. We've both always been pretty low libido. I would say we have sex once a week and we try to have a date night every other week, leaving the girls with my mother. We are very affectionate towards one another. She graduated with an art degree. When we first got married, she was working as a teacher. She taught English and art in a local high school. She hated it and she quit when she was pregnant with our first. She has a studio in our house, basically an extra bedroom with all her art stuff in it that the kids aren't allowed in. And she paints when the kids are out of the house. She feels like her degree is useless, but told me she wasn't interested in going back to school. We used to pay for a weekly maid service, but my wife decided she didn't want to spare the expense. I'm just looking for input right now. Honestly, I feel like her response to this situation was completely out of line and nearly unbelievable, and I'm not sure I want to continue a relationship with someone who considers giving away her kids before even asking for help. She has consistently denied that anything was wrong and apparently put up a front to make me think that she wasn't struggling. Additional info from Opus: it's not like I forced her to have kids. She chose not to have an abortion and she herself chose to have a second child. She approached me about it. She was so happy when I said yes, let's do it. She never asked for any help. She didn't let on that things weren't perfect until the last few months, when I repeatedly asked her if things were okay. She bottled up her feelings until she was ready to give up our kids and was making real plans about it behind my back. Everybody's acting like I'm the bad guy here for working long hours, but it's not that simple. Whatever direction things take, I absolutely will be hiring a nanny. Update 1. Here's the Opus TLDR: is that my wife, a Som with plenty of outlets and time away from the kids, told me she didn't love our daughters and casually mentioned that she was looking to adopt them out so that we could play newlyweds again. I was blown away and took my daughters to safety at my mother's house after my wife went to bed. I second-guessed myself a little after the initial responses I was getting from my first post. I didn't expect anybody to side with my wife. I should have given more information from the start, but I didn't realize all that stuff would be relevant. I thought that from the fact that she was trying to adopt out our kids without my knowledge, people would realize that the issue was with her. I'm not trying to say I'm perfect by any means, but I took a lot of unwarranted criticism. Anyway, after I elaborated on our situation a little more, I got a ton of helpful advice and support. Thank you to everyone who commented or sent me a PM. I took a lot of the advice to heart. This update is going to be long. A lot of really crazy shit has happened. I'm in the process of finding a live-in nanny now, and I appreciate everyone who suggested it. Yesterday, I contacted a lawyer for advice and then bit the bullet and called my wife. One of my close friends lives a few houses down, so I explained the situation and had him on standby. I left my daughters with my mom and came back to the house to meet with her. She was absolutely furious. The first words out of her mouth were, "Where the fuck have you been, you piece of shit?" When I got to the house, she berated me for leaving without saying a word to her or answering the phone. She accused me of cheating on her, called me a pig and an asshole, and ranted for a good 15 minutes straight. She didn't say a word about the kids, didn't ask me where they were or if I had taken them. It's like she had forgotten they existed. I cut her off, told her where I had been and that I had taken the girls to my mother's house. She seemed caught off guard. She asked me why. I explained to her that the way she had talked about adopting them out was not acceptable, and since she didn't care about them, I didn't think they were safe around her. She blinked and said word for word, "Wait, you want to keep them? Don't you love me?" I lost it. I'm not proud of it, but I couldn't hold it together. Reddit. It devolved into a screaming fight with me telling her she was fucking insane and her yelling that I didn't love her. I went through the house and packed up all my valuables and personal documents with her screaming her head off at me the whole time. My friend came in to try and calm her down, but she threw a plate at him and told him to get the fuck out. At this point I called the cops. She dug her hole deeper by punching one of the cops and then biting the other once she was cuffed. I am now 100% certain that she's having some kind of psychotic break. She will be evaluated soon, but either way I'm going through with the divorce. I doubt I'll have any trouble getting full custody, especially with that call to the adoption agency on her phone records. After my wife was arrested, I cleaned up the house and brought my daughters back home. They haven't asked where mommy is yet, but I don't know what to tell them when they do. I'm looking into taking a lower responsibility role at work, at least to where I'm not gone for a whole week at a time. I will still be heavily reliant on a nanny, but I can't stand the thought of my daughters not having a parent there to put them to bed every night. TLDR, got a lawyer, met with my wife. She thought I had cheated on her, basically didn't even realize the girls weren't home. When I told her I wasn't okay with adopting out our daughters, she accused me of not loving her, and then assaulted my friend when he came to help smooth things over. I called the cops. She got arrested, sucker punched one cop and bit another. I'm divorcing her, seeking full custody, and dialing back my work schedule. Edit. Growing up, my father was a schizophrenic. I'm not interested in putting my daughters through what I went through. Even if she gets treatment, it will be a constant worry for me. If she had cancer or some other illness, it wouldn't affect her love for our daughters. I wouldn't have to worry that she would murder them or abandon them or hurt them when I wasn't around. That's the difference. Edit 2. I called my mom, and she said she told my daughters that their mommy had to go on a trip for a little while. That's why they haven't asked about her so far. Update 2. Previous post TL doctor met with my wife. Didn't even realize the girls weren't home. She accused me of not loving her, then assaulted my friend. I called the cops. She got arrested, sucker punched one cop and bit another. It's been a good while since my last update, but things are progressing, so I figured I'd post something. My wife has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. She is undergoing extensive therapy and trying to work out her legal issues as well. I'm still not sure what direction that is going to take. My wife's parents have been helping her with legal arrangements as she refuses help from me and didn't even want to use my insurance to help with her medical bills. She ended up having to anyway, and I've been sending her parents money to help with paying what's left over. We mutually decided to go ahead with the divorce. She didn't want custody of our daughters or even visitation. I practically begged her to at least come to their birthdays and holidays, but she said no. I'm hoping that it's a symptom of her illness and that once she progresses through her treatment enough, she will change her mind, but I'm not going to hold my breath. I found a wonderful au pair who is fantastic with my daughters. According to her, they're very self-sufficient and don't need much help with keeping themselves entertained or anything. Really, I suspect my wife had been ignoring the girls even when I wasn't around. They've been constantly asking me when mommy is coming back and I don't know what to tell them. I have to try really hard not to cry in front of them because I don't want them to worry about me. We've been going to family therapy together but still haven't found a way to explain that mommy might never come back. Or she may show back up and not be nice, or she may show back up and be her old self again. My friend, the one she threw a plate at, and his wife and kids have been hanging out at my place a lot to keep us all company. He's been a godsend throughout this whole experience. He decided not to press charges against my wife for the plate thing. This will probably be my last update. The feedback I've gotten from you guys has really helped to ground me during these events. Even just getting validation that I'm not crazy helped. Thanks for everything, Reddit. TLDR, wife is sorting out her legal issues on her own by choice. Turns out she's bipolar, but after medication and therapy, still doesn't want anything to do with our girls. I don't know how to explain things to them even in therapy, but my friend and his family have really been there for us during this hard time. Next story. Am I the a-hole for breaking up with my girlfriend, 27 Fahrenheit, over her younger sister, 24 Fahrenheit? I need some outside perspective on the situation. I broke up with my girlfriend 5 days ago due to her sister behavior. Me and my ex have been dating for the last 2 years. During this time, her sister has come on to me multiple times. I'm not completely sure about the amount of times, but it was almost every time I saw her. I have told the sister multiple times to leave me alone and to stop her behavior as I don't do the cheating thing. But that did nothing. I have spoken to my ex about it multiple times. She even caught her sister in the act of trying to lock me in a room with herself. Nothing changed. I have spoken to their parents about it and that the behavior of the youngest daughter is unacceptable. And again, nothing happened. I'm not going to lie and say the sister was ugly. No, she is actually really beautiful, but I am 100% sure I have not let her on or anything. Even when I greeted her, I gave her a side hug every single time. I have never been in a room alone with her or anything. I just kept my distance from her at all costs. I don't have her on Insta, Facebook. I don't even have her cell phone number. We have never shared a text or phone call. Her family even gave me a stupid nickname, the puppy, because I follow my girlfriend around everywhere when we are over at their house. The only reason I follow her is because her sister's behavior seemed to stop when she is around. I have told her that I will stop going over to her parents' house because that is where the problems are and I want no part of it. She didn't like that idea and sulked around the house for weeks because I didn't want to go with her. No point in time did I tell her she can't go. I just said I wasn't going with her. I relented 5 days ago and went over. We had too much to drink and slept over at the parents' house that night. The morning I woke up with the sister completely naked in bed next to me. I stormed out the room and down to the kitchen and told her we are done in front of her parents. She was silent for what seemed like minutes and started to break down asking why. All I said was go look in that room, and I stormed out of the house and got in my car. It took less than 2 minutes, then the calls started to come in, not just from her but her parents as well. I didn't answer any of the calls. When I got home 40 minutes later, I had 108 missed calls from her and her parents and 36 messages, 2 from her parents. The messages from her parents just apologized to me, saying they thought I was joking about the sister every time I brought it up and they didn't believe me. All I got from my now ex was sorry, and she will handle it and it will never happen again. I shouldn't leave. We can work through this. I'm just done. She has even gotten my family involved and our friend. 90% of everyone is on her side saying I'm overreacting and aita dumping her. We can sort it out. I sent her a message that she has until this Sunday to get her things out of my house. I'm just done. Surprisingly, she has not sugarcoated anything and explained everything correctly to everyone. But I'm still in the wrong for leaving her. Her parents and their messages are angry at me for hurting their daughter. My family is angry because they love her. Our friends are angry because I refuse to take her back and saying I'm overreacting. 2 years of this crap and I'm overreacting. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my meal if she expects me to get a DNA test for my son? Then I want her to get a DNA test for my husband. I 30 Fahrenheit meet my husband Stephen 32 at a friend who was cousin party. We instantly connected and started dating not long after. We have been happily married for 5 years now and have a 4-month-old son. I meet my MIL at his uncle's funeral. He asked me to attend it in support of him. Before we left, his cousin warned me about MIL. He said she wasn't nice as person and she had impossibly high standards to meet and can be judgmental, so don't take it personally as she's like that with everyone. I did ask my husband and he agreed that Mill can be quite judgmental, but not to worry that he will be there for me. I felt like they gave me the sugar-coated version of her because she was terrible. She made a scene about bringing a stranger to a family funeral, but my husband cut her off and said his aunt, who was his uncle's widow, said he could. She spent the rest off the funeral giving me nasty looks and making passive-aggressive comments. She made a scene at our wedding, but that's a different story on its own. But after minimal contact with MIL, my husband eventually got around to telling her that I was pregnant. I expected her to be angry and have a go at him, but she surprised us both and was the complete opposite. She was excited about being a grandmother. She was congratulating us. Her attitude did a complete turn and I grudgingly allowed her to visit. When it was time to give birth to my son, she wanted to see my son being born, but I refused. That's when her ugly side reared its head again and she caused a scene and was thrown out. I refused to let her visit us at home. My husband agreed, but she rang crying and apologizing. She said she was just overwhelmed about being a grandmother and her emotions got the better of her. Against my better judgment, I relented and said okay. When she first held him, she looked at me and said he was beautiful. I went into the kitchen to get us a drink, and then I could hear my husband telling her to get out. I went back in. She started yelling. He needed to get baby tested because he doesn't look like anyone in their family. He kicked her out. She took to SM and told everyone that I cheated on my husband and that my husband needs to get a DNA test to prove he was the dad. She got a lot of attention for that. So I made my own post and said I'll get a test when she gets a test for her son. That just made everything worse. She rang my husband up telling him to take it down. He just hung up on her. Everyone divided and questioning my husband's paternity since she had such a strong reaction to it. Now even my husband is starting to wonder and making me feel I went too far and I'm thanking aita for saying that. 8 months ago, my sister moved back into town. A small backstory, she has not lived here in 10 years as she originally left for college and never came back. We grew apart. We talked maybe once a year, and I haven't seen her physically in 4 years. I've been with my husband for 8 years, married 3. She has met him twice in the entire duration of my relationship with him. He's a quiet and serious man who only opens up in front of me and a few of his select friends. She was struggling to get a job here, so I thought I'd be a good person and ask my husband if he could maybe help her find a job at his company since they work in the same type of field. Fast forward to current times, they actually work in the same department now. He's been acting more closed off towards me lately, but he claims everything is fine when I ask him what is wrong. We had our traditional family Christmas meal yesterday, and at first he tried to get out of it. This is not something he's ever tried to do, and I was very confused by this. After some convincing, he finally agreed to come along. My sister pulled him aside a few times, and they were in a very deep conversation, as if the rest of us didn't exist. When I approached them every time, they both would jump a little, and when I'd ask what they were talking about, they would say a work project that's near deadline. I was feeling a little off about their behavior, but the one thing that got me the most was at one point, he got up to go get himself another drink. She was sitting in a chair that was next to the kitchen door, so he had to pass her to go to the kitchen. When he was near her, she put her hand up, reached towards him, and he caressed her palm and lightly grabbed her fingers as he walked past her. She looked up at him with a big smile. He looked down at her and nodded his head. As soon as he was out of sight, she turned her head towards me and smirked at me. I later asked him what that was about and he said, "It's just a high five." I said it didn't look like a high five and he said that's all it was. I've never had any reason to suspect him of cheating, but this has me feeling on edge. I've been battling with myself to investigate further. Another thing is that he doesn't focus that strongly when he and I talk. It's always just short answers and light-hearted. They were having some intense conversations where he was hanging on her every word and giving her in-depth responses. TLDR, I'm starting to suspect my husband and my sister may be having an affair, or are beginning to think about doing so. I feel like I'm overreacting but had no one else to vent to. Update: I, 31 Fahrenheit, think my husband, 29 and my sister, 28 Fahrenheit, are too close for comfort. January 13, 2024. I apologize for not updating sooner. I've been busy getting things sorted out. After my first post on a Tuesday, I had asked my husband if he'd go on a little weekend getaway with me. We went to a cabin up in the mountains. Neither of us had cell phone service. I planned for that, as I wanted to make sure I had his full attention. The first night went fantastic, and I almost forgot everything about my concerns with my sister. When we woke up the next morning, we cooked breakfast together, but he was rather quiet. I asked if he'd go on a little walk with me, which he agreed to. When we reached the lake, there were some large rocks that you could sit on. We both sat on the same rock, and we sat there in silence for what felt like forever. I finally got the courage to bring up the concerns I had with my sister and him, and his face went white. He admitted to falling in love with my sister. He said that it all started because of how much they have in common. They spend more time together at work than he does with me at home. He said he feels like he can talk to her about anything and it never gets tiring. He said he's never felt more alive than he does when he's with her, and they started having a physical affair in October. The emotional affair began in June, after working with her for a couple of months since the end of April. He apologized for hurting me and betraying me. I asked him what he wanted to do about it, and he said that as much as he knows it will hurt me to say, he no longer is in love with me. The most painful thing I've ever heard in my life is when he said that the way he feels for her made him realize that he's never once felt that way for me, even at the time when he loved me the most. He said it's not comparable by any measure and he doesn't feel right staying married to me. We are splitting in agreement that the marriage is over, but yes, I am heartbroken. They have both applied to transfer jobs to a different city with the same company, and he offered to let me keep the house. I told him that I didn't want the house because it reminds me of him, us. We have split the finances and he is giving me more money than he is taking. We are getting ready to list it for sale and I have been packing and doing odds and ends like painting. He said I could keep the full amount of the house sale. New carpet flooring comes tomorrow and the movers come this afternoon. I found a small house for myself to start fresh, but I know it will take some time for me to not be so heartbroken. My sister, on the other hand, is not handling it as kindly as he is, and she is gloating. She even accidentally sent me a photo of both of them where you can tell she is in heaven because she won him away from me. She changed her profile photo to a picture of her taking a selfie of herself, smiling very smug as he is kissing her forehead. I unfollowed her on TikTok because now she's posting videos and photos of them together. Some of them are from months ago and it kicked me in the heart. I asked him if he could please ask her to stop. He said he'd talk to her about it, but nothing has changed. I have removed myself from social media for now, except for Reddit. My mother is favoring my sister's side, saying that she's not posting those things to hurt me, and my sister deserves to be happy. My mom said it's my fault for looking, and I need to stop being so petty. My father is taking the white flag and said he'd like to stay out of it. He said it's not right what my sister did, but she's still his daughter. He said he won't accept their relationship and he is here for me for whatever I need, but he won't be in the middle of this. I respect his decision on that. I'm sure it's not an easy place to be in. Thank you all for the kind words and all of the advice that was given. I probably didn't add everything, but my brain is kind of foggy at the moment. TLDR, my husband admitted to being in love with my sister and having an affair. He asked for a divorce and they are pursuing their relationship officially. Edit: for those thinking that this unrealistic because it was magically resolved in 18 days, it is far from resolved. They are moving to a different office because he said he feels guilty and doesn't want to be near me. They have not transferred yet because they can't for a while due to lack of openings. I worded it wrong, which is my fault. I wanted to update as much as possible as to try to put closure to this for those asking for an update. Also, I am NC with all of them except my soon-to-be ex at the moment and will be for a long time, if not forever. If not forever, I will be NC with him after the divorce.